with another feature that's not real common, but I won't call them rare. Now this was the beginning, this time frame is the beginning of this type of key here that slides in and out. This key again now from now on will be pretty much common to the rest of Marx. What you see that is really different on this one is all of this gearing on the side and all of this up here. And what it is, the gearing is driving this wheel inside here, and it's really a fan, and it blows air. And as it blows it, and there's another bunch of gearing that lifts this lever up as it goes around, and it gives it an intermittent whistling sound. So it's got its own air whistle. Now you won't be able to see it, but on the other ones I had showed you the governor had moved to the inside of the frame, and it was over here. With this mechanism, the governor's still inside the frame, but it's way down here low towards the lower side of the engine frame. This is another of the reversing motors, and this motor is, as far as the reversing, it's the same basic motor as what we've just seen. A couple of subtle changes though. It now has stamped steel wheels, and again it has the opening for the slide-in square key now instead of the screw-in key that we've seen on some of the early motors. Just for those of you that are ever working on one of these, if you have trouble getting the motor in and out, when this spring is unwound and it gets all this slack up there, this part down here drops down. And these are your motor mounts here. When that spring drops down, it pushes against the back of the engine shell that this slides into, makes it real difficult to get out. So what you want to do is you want to wind the motor back up, put the tension back on the spring, and as it does it, that'll make this thing jump up out of the way, and it'll no longer be pushing pressure on where the engine mounts. We're moving along to a little bit later motor. Mechanically and physically, just not a lot of difference in it. Everything's pretty much the same. Here again, your brake levers on the top, you got the grinding wheel, you got the bell down here, and the governor's down lower on the other side. Probably the biggest thing you're going to see that really is different on these are the blackened frame and the blackened drivers. Other than whether some came black and some won't, but this particular style will probably, other than possibly the sparking unit, when they moved into plastic engines, the sparking unit went away most of the time. But that's pretty consistent with what you would see now going all the way into the early 70s and the end of Marx. Now the basic workings of this motor are virtually identical to the last one we just saw as far as the working mechanisms. The one thing you'll see that's different is this is your brake lever. It doesn't, instead of going straight up, it comes out the back. And also, instead of that stamped steel cross member, it's got what you would call a fake steam chest here. Alright, and the reason for that is that one, instead of going into the types of engines you usually see, went into this guy. It's a die-cast 666. This is a very rare piece, and this one's been through the mill, but when they only made a few of them, you don't argue when you can get your hands on one. So the mounting is a little different. It would mount right here, and there is no slot up here for the brake lever. So that bar for the brake lever will come out the back of the cab. Now this is another one that's got the majority of it are the very common parts that are common to other motors. This one does have a couple of changes. One, it's got the square key, which we've been seeing. Instead of the side rods being riveted on, they lock into a little hole in the side of the wheel. Basically, it makes it cheaper to assemble. The bell and governor are as we've seen before. What makes this one unusual is this mechanism here in the front. You got this rotating cam, excuse all the dust, and this lever here in the front. And I've got this one slightly wound so you can, with a little luck, you can see that lever snap. Obviously this motor has not been cleaned and oiled and so on. But anyway, as it goes along, that lever snaps back and forth. And what it does, this train we've all nicknamed Mother's Curse. See this little bladder? It looks like a balloon. It's actually kind of kidney shaped. And what you would do is you remove this, and again, because I haven't done anything with this motor since I got it, you would take this little cap off like that, and you fill this with a special powder that they gave you, which is basically a baby or talcum powder. Put the cap back in because that would make the hole smaller, and as this thing flapped back and forth, it would beat against this bulb and it would puff the powder out into the air so that it was like it was smoking. Now you can imagine the first 1 or 2 times this thing ran across some mother's brand nice clean carpet and all the powder was going all over the place, why it probably got confiscated or thrown away real quick. So not a lot of these survive in good shape. I think mothers that bought them turned around and threw them away right away. So another unusual motor. Alright, this is kind of the end of the Marx motors. This is about the last variation they made. It's definitely the last version anyway of anything that I own. Again, all pretty much common to everything we've seen so far. You got a bell here and the governor's down low, the upright brake lever. Biggest change here is in the drivers, and they've gone from the stamped steel back to a cast driver, but it does have the slip-in rods here to make them cheaper to produce. These are real thin casts, though they're not as thick as the early cast type wheels. And so that's kind of the end of the line for the Marx, and it was most common in a real low-end locomotive like this one here. Came in a couple other styles also, but that's probably the one it was in most often.